Welcome once again on this very wonderful journey where we get up close with personalities who are contributing well to their professions and maintaining a very healthy work life balance by making time for meditation. There is definitely a lot to uncover, to discover when we chat with them every single time. Now, it goes without saying that high tech professionals have a mentally demanding career. So, to ensure productivity and success, they need to make sure that their mind is as relaxed as it can be. Therefore, learning meditative techniques that can help them stay focused and calm as they work can not only make their jobs a lot easier, but can also make their lives more balanced and meaningful. My guest today is a web services manager for a local government in UK and a long-standing meditator living in West London with his wife and two children. Welcome Sanjeev Lal on the program. Welcome Sanjeev.
Hello, hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. So, Sanjeev, your journey in meditation has been longer than your professional career, which is a rarity, and that's why I wanted you to be a guest. So, we would love to hear all about your story. So, could you share with our listeners your background and the story behind how you got introduced to meditation?
So, in fact, it was my mother. She introduced me to Sahaja Yoga meditation. It was nearly 30 years ago now. And I was a student in London, and mum was always a person that was interested in seeking in meditation. And I remember going along to a class in a community centre in West London. And at the time, I was also searching for something a little bit more than just what you might say, sort of what materially life had to offer. So something a bit more spiritual. And that was reflected in what I was reading and generally what my interests were at the time. And and I, aside from satiating my mental questions, I noticed that attending one of these evening classes always had the effect of making me feel much lighter and more alert as well at the same time. And just in my own honesty, I couldn't get that feeling anywhere else. Right.
And so that very class, the experience was enough to make you feel that it was something you wanted to stick to?
Absolutely, yeah. So it was something where, the proof of the pudding was in the eating. You know, you always consistently felt lighter, and it was a very reliable feeling as well at the end of every session that you attended. And I had to say, well, I can't replicate this anywhere else.
Wow, awesome. And that's why you started practicing it. So, after you'd been practicing it, what changes did you start to experience or notice?
Yeah, so I didn't immediately start practicing the meditation at home regularly for at least a few weeks, but when I did, I found that the results of meditation were basically getting into this mental silence, you could say. Initially, that period of mental silence was just a few seconds, but sort of as I found, the more you did it, the more you practiced it, the longer that period of mental silence increased. And I also found that from others around me, they noticed changes in my behaviour. So I was much less prone from being either very excited or sort of or lethargic and rather glum. Sort of was just. I think people noticed also just a lot more of a consistency in my own behaviour, I think, as well.
And I think when others start to notice a change in us, then it means it's really something that's working, and that is one thing that we should definitely think about sticking to. So now, Sanjeev, if you could talk about how meditation helps you with any challenges, be it personal or professional.
Yeah, so I've basically been in the IT industry, you could say, for coming up to 20 years, really in the fields of IT and digital services, 15 years. And there are lots of demands, and the demands range from sort of having to keep up with rapidly changing technologies. As soon as you think you've kind of like mastered a sort of scripting language or something, another one comes out, and which kind of almost replaces it, and keeping up updated with sort of like um, libraries of languages of commands and whatnot, as they're constantly changing. And also increasingly, certainly within management, which is where I'm kind of going into now, increasingly an awareness of the impact my role has from legislation. And recent examples from my side have been accessibility regulations for public sector bodies, data compliance, what we call GDPR compliance, and basically it's really, really important that we are not only aware of what those changes are, but the impact of those changes on what we do in our field. And also I manage in the team not only web services, but I've got an intern at the moment, and so there are lots of sort of collective pressures that puts onto my work life, you can say. And what I find is very consistent with Sage Yoga meditation is that the method to experience that inner silence is reliable. Despite whatever the day throws at you, it's just very reassuring to have a technique that clears one's system of that which is otherwise troubling, which can be a source of stress and a source of strain, and just something that kind of hangs over you like a black cloud, you know. And it means, for example, that meditating after work, the quality of the evening is much, much better. Similarly, meditating during the day at work with colleagues really just gives you a nice boost in the day. And it just means I've got more time and can give a bit of attention to those that are around me.
Right. So it seems like you have to be ready to adapt, to learn a lot of new things, a lot of time management, talent management. And it's also awesome, you know, when you're able to do it with ease. Otherwise, it's such a struggle to do it because you've got to do it, you know, one way or the other. But only if it's a little more comfortable, the journey then becomes so much more enjoyable. All right. So, Sanjeev, it is said that with meditation, a person becomes more aware of one's own emotional state, which enables him or her to take corrective action quickly. So, do you find yourself, you know, wanting to yell at someone for failing on keeping a deadline, or just feeling like giving up on someone or something? And is it easier to regain control of yourself and get back in balance, even if you did feel all of that?
Yeah, it's interesting because you do tend to work with all sorts of interesting characters at your own level, you know, at more senior levels, and people that are working as apprentices that you're perhaps training up. So, and with that comes all sorts of personalities and all sorts of things. I tend to find, I mean, my experience has been the thing that the meditation helps with most is being able to witness things, because there can be there can be sort of a circus of behavior and activity that can go on around you, and you can choose to get involved in that circus, and that can affect you, or you can also choose to actually see what you can do to witness what's going on around you, and sort of look at that and say, okay, this is happening, but not be involved in that in terms of the reaction, and that I find is a very helpful, almost like a defense mechanism to use to kind of like handle situations as much as possible, so that what you're giving is actually consistent with kind of how you are, and I think people appreciate that. And also the other thing I was going to say is people look at the way you work and the example that you set as well, and that does have an effect, I find, in it's reflected in the work then that others produce around you as well.
It just sounds so good that these things that we find in textbooks, we see someone who is able to demonstrate that in their lives. And like you said, you know, just then sets examples for others. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk in continuation of this discussion of self awareness is that meditators they say, can identify when they're getting distracted so that they can then redirect their thoughts and actions towards whatever demands it. Now, in that sense, do you see any ease in evading distractions because you meditate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, in the end, I think it does seem to boil down to sort of where one's attention is, because, you know, the demands of sort of busy work life situations is your attention is demanded in all sorts of situations. For me, it is work, it's family, and it's all the other things that it is to run a household. So um, and all of that can quite easily sort of try to have the effect of shattering one's attention. And and I just find directly, just with the regular meditation, it just helps sort of kind of stabilize the attention. So you put your attention on sort of what's required at what time, and to produce something that is kind of some kind of quality. um, and not allow the other things to sort of to get in the way, because that's often a telltale sign, I find, of when and I'm not saying it doesn't happen with me, but I just tend to find that things are generally a lot more consistent. You can kind of focus on a very specific um, task at hand with the attention, as opposed to sort of like be kind of like half doing that, because you know that you're thinking about the other three or four things that need to be done as well. So yeah.
That's very well put, because I think this is something most of us are experiencing nowadays, with so much that demands our attention. And then, there are tens of things that we're trying to do all at the same time. So, Sanjeev, in IT jobs, there is less opportunity for a cut-off time, and workplace stress typically follows employees to their homes, affecting their family life, which as a resultant, comes back to the office space, thus making it a kind of never-ending loop. So, are there challenges like that, or are there any challenges that are unique to your field, and do you see how meditation can help?
Absolutely. So, so I've begun a weekly Monday lunchtime online meditation at work, and that was actually since most of the workforce have been working from home since the end of March in the UK. It was the 24th of March when our Prime Minister announced the national lockdown, the first national lockdown due to COVID-19. And in our workplace environment, in local government, we found overnight where traditionally people were coming in, residents were coming in for face-to-face meetings. Everything went online, literally overnight, and that basically put a huge demand on our team, which is the web services team, because we were one of the teams that were basically helping services to go online right now. So that was quite a crazy time, I have to say. And in addition to that, that change in work style, which was reflected in the staff surveys and from speaking to colleagues, it was very clear that the workforce were experiencing different increased levels of stress, anxiety, isolation, fear about the short and the long term effects of the pandemic. So as a result of all of that, I introduced a 30-minute lunchtime class, a very simple format. It was quite literally sort of just a little introduction to say hello to everybody that was there, and then a focus, which was a 10 or 15-minute online meditation. And what I found, which was really just quite remarkable, was just within that very short space of time, that everybody, all the participants, felt so positive after just such a short amount of focused meditation. And so for me, regardless of practicing for some time or like some of my other colleagues, just a matter of a few weeks, it was incredibly rejuvenating to have that little boost in the day. And so we've just completed a 10-week batch of meditations, and upon popular demand and request, we're now into our second 10-week block online meditations. Yeah.
That's great. And yes, COVID just hit, and all of a sudden there was this huge demand put on your department. And that's what happens with IT departments, because somehow they're coming to be the lifeline of the societies. So, yeah, so that's about your professional undertakings and how you find meditation helps you. Now, I was also curious and I wanted to ask if there's anyone else in the family who meditates like you do, and, if there's something that you wanted to share over there.
For sure, yeah. I've got two boys. They're 14 and 11, and yeah, both of them meditate. They were, I suppose, you could say, they were. So my wife and I, we were both meditating when we were married, and so the children kind of like came into a family that were already meditating, you could say. You know. So they've known this from when they were babies, really, you could say. What I would say is that increasingly, sort of as they're sort of going into, you could say, becoming teenagers, they're becoming a lot more aware of the world around them, and I'd say that, and with that, uh, they meditate every day, twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, to help sort of help them balance and deal with. Um, their own situations and what's going on in their own lives. The older one is in the middle of doing mock exams at the moment, so this he's finding actually just does help him because it's quite an intense period. And again, they're into different kinds of demands for them. The school day has changed for them in a way that we'd perhaps taken for granted up until now, and also sort of other areas. But yeah, absolutely. So they do meditate themselves, and they and we find also with them that they benefit greatly, really, from the meditation.
And I think the best thing is that they are able to see the benefits and are embracing it. It's not that they're doing something just because mom, dad do it or want them to do it. And I think if you've gotten your children to that point, it's something to be really glad about.
I mean, I mean, more and more. You can see that they're becoming their own adults, and they're becoming their own little individuals. Who aren't necessarily just coming along with mum and dad anymore.
Right. We do see families, where kids practice something because parents want them to. And when they have a little bit of their own independence, they just drop out because they never got a chance to experiment it for themselves. So that's great parenting, I must say.
It's a labour of love, though, as well. It's kind of like there is still the role that we play as parents, but and in terms of guiding them. But we do what we can, but we try to sort of basically put the emphasis on what's practical about this, and in order that it helps them very much in a pragmatic way in their lives.
So, Sanjeev, any final messages for the listeners in general or listeners specifically engaged in a profession like yours?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So just about the meditation that I've been running at lunchtimes, the link that I've been going to, there will be many other links as well, but the one particular one I've been going to is remeditate.co. And they've got a great drop down on there, which basically asks you how you would like to feel. So, for example, less anxious or satisfied or content. So that's one drop down, and the other field it has is how long do you have? 5, 10 or 15 minutes. And then according to that, you are presented with a meditation, and it just comes up on the screen and you kind of press play. So that's one thing I'd absolutely recommend to anybody that especially is time pressed, just in terms of a sort of a first exposure to this. But I'd say definitely come along and try the meditation with an open mind. I'd say there are very few things that I'm aware of that can change people in a very positive way, like Sahaja Yoga does. My profession, like many others, will have the common thread of being demanding, stressful, and the feeling of just being overworked. And having something like this that's free, simple to do means really you've literally got nothing to lose with this, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think meditation is a simple, basic mental hygiene which just helps you clear out the junk from your mind and helps you just get in touch with your inner self. And like you said,
Hmm.
there's nothing to lose. You just have to spend some time, which actually, in my opinion, is just an investment towards our growth and well
Totally.
being. Well, thank you so much, Sanjeev, for sharing from your experience. And it was really wonderful talking to you. And once again, thanks a lot for being on the show. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for having me on your show.